Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us with this session, Weathering the Storm, Exploring Occupations and COVID-19 Financial Assistance Resources. I'm Heather Surrency, and I'm the Health and Financial Literacy Coordinator at FLC. I'm very pleased to welcome Lesley Mace, the Senior Education Program Manager at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, the Jacksonville branch. Lesley is a veteran presenter at the Florida Literacy Conference, and she historically has provided us with a wide range of financial and career information to help our students meet their financial goals. So we're so happy to have you here with us today, Lesley. At the end of the session, I'm going to follow up with some useful financial resources to assist students who may be financially impacted by COVID-19. So we'll spend a few minutes at the end of our session looking at those. So, Lesley, take it away.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the opportunity occupations, as well as a lot of resources that you can use with your students to explore those occupations and other career resources to help students develop their human capital, which we'll be talking about today. I am the Senior Education Program Manager at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta's Jacksonville branch. I cover most of the state of Florida except for the Miami area. And you see my contact information is down there. Before we get started, I do want to say a disclaimer that these are my views, not those of the Federal Reserve or the Federal Reserve System or necessarily the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. They are my own. We always get that disclaimer when we get started out. And so let's talk a little bit about these opportunity occupations. What we have here is one of our infographics. We have a whole series of infographics. I'll be going into a little bit more detail later, but this is the very first one we developed about human capital. And this one talks about if you have less than a high school diploma, and kind of introduces the idea of what human capital is. These posters can be ordered from our website. They're very colorful for the classroom. You can also look at them PDF files online, and they all have activities that go with them as well. So when we talk about human capital, we're talking about skills and knowledge, training that people possess. This is something actually that's developed throughout your whole lifetime, beginning with when you're first learning how to read, all the way through on-the-job training and continuing education that you have as you go on in your career. And one of the things that we have, quite a few resources that we have at the Federal Reserve are on personal finance. And pretty much all of our personal finance curriculum, they all stress the importance of investing in yourself and developing your own human capital. Although we have lots of information about saving and investing, and students will be thinking, when you say the word investing, they'll be thinking about the stock market or something like that. We always start all of our personal finance curriculums with the idea that the most important investment you can make is in yourself by getting human capital and also improving it. And for the most part, there's really has always proven to be a very strong correlation between human capital that an individual possesses and the amount of income that they earn. This slide here is going to talk a little bit about human capital as far as it applies to the general economy. So if students and adults develop human capital, that's going to give us a pool of skilled labor, and then that's going to attract new industry to the area. Before I moved to Florida about 10 years ago, I lived in Montgomery, Alabama, and we had the Hyundai plant there. And one of the things I know when they were trying to attract the plant and in many other areas as the auto industry has moved down to the southeast is before they go to scout out the site, are they going to be able to find the labor? Are they either going to find people who already have the skills, or are they going to be able to find people who have the basic skills necessary so that they can be trained for the jobs? And I know that they have a lot of partnerships that they have with local schools as well as universities when they bring in the plants and get them started off the ground. When this new industry comes, that creates high-paying jobs. I know the Hyundai plant was paid very high wages for the area, and then that goes into the general economy. It not only increases the standard of living for those who have those jobs, but then there's the multiplier effect as they go out and spend that income that they have earned. It helps the local restaurants and car dealerships and so forth. And so it's kind of a circular flow beginning with the development of human capital that ends up not only benefiting the individual, but also the local economy. So we're going to start with a first poll question. So as you saw on the human capital infographic, it's talking about if you don't have a high school diploma. So if you don't have a high school diploma, how many years do you think it will take to earn $1 million? Is it 35 years, 25 years, 15 years, or 50? So I will let you vote on that one. All right, so most people said 50 years. We have some 35, some 25, some 15. I'm going to show you the answer. And this is from the infographic. So if you do not have a high school diploma, it takes about 35 years. We're looking at the average wages for those without a high school diploma in order to earn $1 million. And so this graphic is really showing, when you look at it, that correlation between human capital and earnings. It's about a little over 25 years for high school diploma, 24 for people who have gone to college but don't have a degree, and we see that it goes up to about 16 years for those with a bachelor's degree, 13 for a master's, and about 10 for professional degrees such as being a lawyer or a doctor or dentist, and 10.5 for a doctoral degree. So I know that when I speak to young people that come into our bank for programs or tours, lots of times they'll ask us about jobs and the Fed, and the first thing they want to talk about is, how much money do these jobs pay? What is the salary? But actually, there's more to it than that. You can tell people that, yes, you get more education, you'll earn more money, and actually, there's a statistic out there that for every year that you stay in school, it increases your average wage over your lifetime by 10%. So when I was in the classroom, I taught at the college level, I also taught at the high school level. I still do some adjunct teaching of economics. And I have a lot of non-traditional students, a lot of adult students, and sometimes some of the younger students would say, you worked all day as construction and worked all day at a factory, and why are you coming out here to take classes at night? And lots of times I didn't step in, I would let them explain that. And a lot of it has to do with getting a higher wage so that they can provide for their families. But there's more to it than that. And we have that on the infographic here. So we've got 35 years to earn $1 million. But also, and this is when this infographic came out, so we've got these statistics are a few years old, but the poverty rate for individuals that are 25 or older that don't have a high school diploma is 26%, so more than 1 in 4. We've got the 2018 unemployment rate, which is 5.6%. Now we know that there's been a lot going on with the unemployment rate lately, so I'm going to update that for you, but we'll see what it looks like in times that are not what's going on right now. And then the median weekly earnings, $553. This is what I always call the graph. So this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They always start with age 25 and older, giving people the time that many people complete their education. And so this is a little bit updated. It does show the correlation between education and earnings. But it also shows something else on the left that I think is really important, which is unemployment rate. And we know that because of the pandemic and COVID-19, how that has affected the economy with the shutdowns. And we've seen a lot of areas where People have lost their jobs, and then there's people who have been able to work from home. And a lot of that is also correlated to the type of job you have. And we look at the unemployment rates during a time that's not the atypical that we're going through right now. We see that less than high school diploma has an unemployment rate more than twice what somebody who has a bachelor's degree would have. And so that's something else to think about, not only earning higher wages, but also being less likely to become unemployed as a result of the business cycle or recession. Now we want to update that. This is from May 2020. And so as we can see here, typically, it was the one we just saw, it was 2.2% for people who have a bachelor's degree. That has risen to 7.4%. We see that, but we see how it rises and is more 2.5 times for less than a high school diploma. So 1 in 5 workers that are in the labor force with less than a high school diploma are unemployed. So that's pretty dramatic, and so that's another advantage of increasing your skills and making yourself a more valuable employee. Now, one of the things that I really like to show when I talk about the opportunity occupations comes from the Mike Rowe Foundation, and we know that he had the show Dirty Jobs, and on his website he has this poster, and he said that this poster was in his counselor's office in the 1970s when he was in high school, and he said he thinks it's the worst idea because it's giving the idea that work smart, go to college, don't work hard, and don't be in these dirty jobs, and those are kind of your alternatives. And he kind of turned that around on its head to work smart and hard. And so on the right-hand side, you see quite a different picture from what he in the old poster. And I think one thing he's tried to call attention to is that what we think of as blue-collar jobs or a job that would not require a 4-year college degree is not a job that doesn't require skills. A lot of these jobs require very high-level technical skills, mathematics skills. And another thing that he likes to stress is thinking about a 4-year college degree and the cost of that, and making sure that you're getting a good return on your investment, because a lot of these opportunity occupations are paying wages as high as a college graduate would receive, and then you would not have the debt associated with a college education. I'll be talking about that a little bit more later. And so we're going to look at some of these opportunity occupations. His foundation actually gives scholarships to people who are in the opportunity occupations, and let's take a look at what some of them actually are. So I found this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. One of the areas that is really surging as far as demand, as well as number of people who are retiring in this industry, is what we would call in my day, or the old day, kind of the old days, the blue collar jobs. And in the building where I work when I'm not working from home, there is an elevator, and sometimes it breaks. And I do not want to get on the elevator when it's not operating properly. And so I found this very interesting, that looking at jobs with that require a high school diploma or equivalent, elevator installer and repairer, the median pay, which is half earned less, half earned more, about $85,000 for someone who installs and repairs elevators. Boiler makers, we see is in the 60s, as well as construction and building inspectors, electricians, about 56,000, plumbers, 55,000. And one thing, statistic, and I double checked this, it's gone up since the last time I checked. The average age of a master plumber is 58 years old. And so there's going to be, as these workers retire, there's going to be a very large demand for workers in these areas. Iron workers, we see 53, sheet metal workers, 50,000. In fact, in construction jobs overall, the average age is between 40 and 42 years old. And so there is going to be a great demand, and as I'll show you later, the statistics, these jobs are growing at twice the average of all jobs in general. So what are the opportunity occupations? So I'm going to next transition into another infographic that we have that's available on our website. Opportunity occupations are jobs that do not require a 4-year college degree, a bachelor's degree, and they pay more than the national average. Now, when this infographic was assembled, that was $37,690. That's now increased to about $39,000, and it is adjusted for cost of living, so a little bit different in different areas of the country. But these we call these opportunity occupations because they do. You don't need a 4-year college degree, but you can earn above average wage. So I have a question. This is for the chat, and I'm not seeing the chat on my end right here, but these are some of the opportunity occupations: licensed practical nurse, truck drivers, bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks, and carpenters. And so my question is, so this is the current national median annual wage, about $40,000. Which one of these pays higher than the national median annual wage? Is it A, B, C, D, or E?
So a lot of people are answering, Lesley, E, but we still have some comments coming in.
Okay.
So a few people think it's B. The majority seem to think that it's A.
All right. Okay. Well, it is actually, a few more people are answering, so I can see that. It is actually E. All of these jobs pay more than the national median annual wage. And so we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into each of these jobs and what are the most in-demand opportunity occupations, which all of these are. So this comes from a report that was done by the Philadelphia Fed in 2017 called Exploring Employment for Sub-Baccalaureate Workers. They looked at 121 metro areas, and it's not surprising that people said registered nurse, because that is actually the largest opportunity occupation with over 1.3 million people employed in that occupation in the opportunity employment. So if you look at this graph, you see it says opportunity employment 65.9%. I was actually, gosh, it was actually just recently that I realized that a registered nurse did not require a bachelor's degree. But in some places it does, depending on the employer or the local geographic area. So that's why it says 65.9%, because in some areas that does not require a bachelor's degree, where some employers would require one. And so you see that there's no lower wages, meaning that no one working in this occupation earns lower than the annual median wage. And then we see number 2 is truck drivers. And that is, for the most part, opportunity employment, 93%, over 1 million truck drivers nationwide. Lower wages, just a small proportion. We see that bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks. My daughter actually did a bookkeeping course just on the side when she was in college. It was about 12 weeks, and that gave her the certification to be a bookkeeper. We see there's over 500,000 jobs there. About half of those also are opportunity occupations. We see maintenance workers, carpenters are there, which is a high occupation and opportunity employment, with a lower wage being maybe the carpenter's helper or apprentice. We see electricians, and LPNs is 100% opportunity employment. So we've got supervisors, about 40%, managers, and then sales representatives. So there's a lot of different occupations there that have the opportunity employment, although it does vary by the employer and also the local area. Another thing here is looking at the percentage change in employment. When I would teach students, I taught an introduction to business class, and we would have various business majors come in and talk about the jobs available. And what, you know, where's the proof? And so here's the proof of what is the percentage change. And as I mentioned earlier, the average age of a master plumber is 58, and we see they are right at the top. Through 2026, a 15% increase in employment for plumbers. We see also registered nurses. As the population ages, that's going to be an increased demand for nurses. HVAC installers, construction trades, we see there, LPNs. Computer user support specialist is over 10%. So computer user support specialist, this is not somebody who has a computer science degree from Georgia Tech. This is an info tech support specialist. I investigated some of these jobs and what kind of certificates you can get. This is a workforce certificate with 18 credits at my local community college. Same thing for licensed practical nurse. That's a 3-term course. There's 11 courses involved in getting your certificate for heating and air conditioning. Electrician is 8 classes to get the entry-level certification. And we see carpenters are there, supervisors, maintenance workers. We're all occupations growing about 7% or so. We see that there are several truck drivers is there, auto mechanics. Those jobs are really growing. And more proof, though, is anybody hiring for these? And so that was one thing I was always trying to get students to go into economics. And so one of the things is that, like, of course, you're going to say it's great, but I would actually go and show them, here's the job advertisements, here's the companies that are hiring. And so this is what this study did as well, and looked at what is the change in the number of job ads for these occupations. So we see that there are a lot of job openings for supervisors in production and construction trades and mechanics and repairs, and there's registered nurses again, more supervisors both in the construction trades, transportation, and administrative, and even retail sales managers. And then we see the computer user support specialists and an administrative assistant. And so they show that these jobs not only are growing, but here's the proof in the fact that the advertisements for job openings have been growing as well. And so here overall is what they found. If you look at all occupations nationwide, you've got 21.6%, so about 1 in 5 is an opportunity occupation. About 27.7% are jobs that pay higher wages but do require a bachelor's degree, and about half jobs of all jobs would be lower than the annual median wage. So let's take a look at Florida. So in addition to having an opportunity occupations infographic, we also have one that is for the state of Florida. And looking at the Southeast, this was published in March 2019. You can get these if you would like to have this one for your classroom. And this is talking about these opportunity occupations for middle skill workers that pay higher than the national median wage without needing a bachelor's degree education. So here are the top jobs for Florida. For us, the one that has and these are not by salary, these are actually by number of workers employed. So the biggest one for Florida is a supervisor in an office setting. Also wholesale and manufacturing sales rep also has about 100,000 people employed in our state, as well as retail supervisors. Truck drivers is a big one for our state, as well as services sales reps, so the people who would be in your auto repairs, selling insurance, or someone who'd be selling different services like roofing or something like that. Licensed practical nurses, construction supervisors, carpenters, police officers, and computer user support specialists. So those are the top 10 for Florida. And then they look at some selected metropolitan areas. So in the Tampa-St. Pete area, about 1 in 5 are opportunity occupations. And so they do vary along area. We'll see that when we look at Miami, but we see some of the same ones that we said, supervisors, sales reps, and truck drivers. And then if we go over to Miami, it does change just a little bit. Miami's a little bit on the lower side when it comes to the opportunity occupations. We know that in tourist areas, we have a lot of hospitality jobs that are going to pay a little bit lower wages, but they have LPN at the top, electricians, then property managers, and then HVAC and plumbers would be at the top for the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach area. And then this looks at Florida overall. About 18.5% of workers are in the opportunity occupations. And this breaks it down that there's about 30% in low skill. There's no one in low skill with opportunity occupations, but there's some middle school, low wages, opportunity occupations there. And then, as we may have mentioned before, about 1 in 5 are high skill, high wage jobs. And this one I think is really interesting because I grew up in a college town. My dad was a college professor. And so these statistics I really wasn't aware of. But when you look at for Florida, looking at bachelor's and graduate degree, that's about 30% of our population. So that means 70% do not have a college education. So we have about 10% have an associate degree. So we have about 20% who have not completed college, but have some college. High school graduates is about 30% and less than high school, about 12. So 70% of the people in Florida do not have a college degree. And so that means that we have a lot of people who would be great to fill these opportunity occupations. This just really reemphasizes some of the things we've already talked about. This is looking at normal times, looking again that less than high school diploma is going to have the highest unemployment rate, and that it declines as you reach higher levels of education. And as we've seen, and we know that talking about the pandemic and COVID, so a lot of it was made at first, we're talking about people who have jobs that can be work from home. A lot of those jobs are jobs that are in that bachelor's degree or higher, high skilled jobs. At the same time, a lot of these opportunity occupations, truck driver, supervisor for retail, such as grocery stores, and our nurses, those have been deemed essential occupations. So those are jobs that during this very extraordinary time, they have kept the demand and been able to remain employed, as well as the construction trade. So the construction trade was also deemed an essential business. So construction workers also have remained employed during the pandemic. And then here we have the median earnings as well. We see that climbs with your level of education. And so here are the infographic posters. So we have 7 in personal finance. One is preparing for the unexpected. So several years ago, the Fed did a study, and it got a lot of attention in the press because of just really how shocking the statistic was, that 40% of people could not meet a $400 unexpected expense. And that is something that has also been brought again to light during this pandemic, when people have lost their job, and do you have some savings to kind of tide you over? And that's kind of what that infographic is about. There's financial disasters. We know there are natural disasters such as a hurricane or a tornado, but also financial disasters, and are you prepared? And gives some steps on how you can build up your savings to better prepare in case there is something unexpected. There's an infographic on the banking system and financial institutions, one on credit and why it's important to have good credit, and how a credit score is what are the components of a credit score, and how having a good credit score can help you. We've already gone over the human capital infographic. There's one on budgeting and how to build a budget, and why you should have a budget, and how you can make the first steps towards putting together a budget. There's one on saving and investing, and the difference between those two, and the different ways you can save and invest. And then also there's one on entrepreneurship, Then you see the opportunity occupation infographic, and these can all be ordered from our website. And then we have some on economics, about the Fed, about different measures of how we look at the health of the economy, like GDP and unemployment rate and inflation and trade. And so we have those as well. So you can order the physical poster. There's also downloadable PDFs. Every single one of these posters has an activity that goes along with it that you can use in the classroom. And what we have just recently done is put all of these activities together in a soft cover book, and you can order that as well from our website if you'd like to get a copy of that. And I'm going to look at some of the questions here as before we go on. Considering the number of years to earn $1 million for education, did this take in consideration a person's earnings have not kept up with the cost of living? Well, that is certainly something to consider. We know one thing, that for sure the minimum wage is not kept up with the cost of living. That's something to always think about. Something recently, since inflation has been so low, people have not thought about that. And not only when they get a raise, if inflation is 2% and you get a 2% wage, you're pretty much even. Another thing where it's important to think about future inflation is when it comes to retirement, and sometimes people don't think about that. So I don't think that was taken into consideration with the poster, but we know specifically, and we have actually have a lesson plan on this about the workers who work for minimum wage. It is definitely not kept up with the rate of inflation. And the next one is about getting access to these posters. And so I've got the link here, and you will get a copy of this presentation in PDF form, and that's where you'll be able to order all of them. And so here I'm going to just give you a little highlight of what the activity looks like for the opportunity occupations. And so it's got a link there to the posters, and it kind of goes along the sequence of the presentation so far, because the first part is to review the human capital poster. And so it's going to introduce students to the correlation between earnings and your education level, and looking at that. And then they can choose a state poster. So since we're in the 6th district, we're headquartered in Atlanta. I'm out of the Jacksonville branch. So our district covers Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Eastern Tennessee, and Southern Louisiana and Mississippi. And so we've got posters for all of those states. And so they can choose a poster and then look at some of the statistics that we've already gone over in this presentation, and they explore that. And then this is something else that we have on our website called the Opportunity Occupations Monitor. This is a digital tool. So a lot of these tools are available digitally. If you're still going to be teaching digitally, or have a hybrid, or that's something that you've always incorporated into your teaching, these are not neat tools that students can go in and explore. And so this one tests the entire country, and you can look at different states, different metro areas, and then look at different years and look at what percentage in that state of all occupations are opportunity occupations. And so this one, we've highlighted Alabama, but let's go to Florida. And so here's Florida, and with the data that the monitor has, Florida has about 18% of opportunity employment. About 1 in 5, that's held steady through all of our statistics from various sources for a bachelor's degree, and about 60%, we do have a lot of tourism jobs, a lot of hospitality jobs. And right above the bar, it says click on any part of the bar to show the breakdown of occupational data. So what it will actually have, it has many different occupations, and it'll show what percentage of those occupations are opportunity occupations. For some, it is 0. For instance, being a teacher would be one where you would not be an opportunity occupation. What's the total employment? What is the entry level median wage? What is the median wage? What was the entry level? And then the percentage change in employment for various occupations. And you can go in and explore that. And then I have another poll question. So this is talking about in Florida, different areas, which one do you think has the highest level of opportunity occupations? Is it Orlando? Is it Miami? Is it Lakeland or the Villages? I'll give everybody a time to think about that. All right, so most people said Orlando. Orlando's, one of the largest cities in Florida. Then we've got some Miami, Lakeland, and the Villages. So I'm going to close this and show the answer. It is actually Lakeland. So Lakeland is the highest. So this comes from the Opportunity Occupations Monitor. You can actually pull this out. These are the cities in Florida that it has data for. And so about 1 in 4 in the Lakeland Winter Haven area is an opportunity occupation. Orlando, it's a little bit less, and Miami, only about 15%. I put in the Villages just because it was the lowest. And so a lot of hospitality jobs, service jobs in the Villages area. We see some of the other areas that have a little bit higher, the Palm Bay area, Fort Myers area, and we see that Jacksonville has over 20%. And so it really that is different depending on the area, but you can go in and explore that as well. I think it's always a good idea to look at that, because I think, and we even had this when we would interview people to be on the faculty, university faculty in economics. People don't always think about cost of living differences. I was teaching in Alabama, where the cost of living is relatively low. In different areas, cost of living, of course, we know varies between Miami, Orlando, Jacksonville. And so that's something to think about, as well as what kind of occupation opportunities are available. And so that's something to think about as well. Another thing that's available through the Philadelphia Fed is a fact sheet on different cities. And so this one actually highlights Jacksonville, which is ranked 82nd out of 121. So that's something to think about. And for the Jacksonville area, the top opportunity occupation is truck driver, followed by LPN, and then we do see electricians and carpenters, registered nurses, bookkeepers, and number 10 is the loan interviewers and clerks, because we do have a very strong financial industry here in Jacksonville. But the wages do vary according to the local area. So that's something you can check out too. I like to do an activity with this where I print these out, a couple of different areas. And these are also available. You can get them digitally on the website there, and then have them compare between the different areas to kind of get that idea that, okay, yes, maybe Orlando pays more than Lakeland, but what's the cost of living and what's the difference? How do the economies differ by what kind of jobs are most in demand? We also have a video series because I know that and I know when I teach, it's good when you say it and the students listen, but it's also good to get some reinforcement and somebody else says it. So there is a video series at investinwork.org that is a partnership with the Federal Reserve System to highlight the opportunity occupations. There's a video series of some success stories. The young woman there on the left, her kids started getting a little bit older, and she decided to come back into the workforce and found a good job in the opportunity occupations with a transportation company. And there's actually 11 different videos in this series, and these videos As you see the one there on the left, good jobs without a bachelor's degree. They're very short. You see this one's less than a minute, talking about why it's important to identify these type of jobs, how the community can support the effort to get more people employed in these jobs, how does education, industry, and the community work together, and how can local communities support these jobs, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so these are all available on YouTube and also through the link there, just short video clips talking about the opportunity occupations as well. Because I think, and myself having taught at high school and college level, that, that not everyone wants to go to college. Sometimes they have parents think that's a really good idea, and sometimes that's not a good fit for the student. Sometimes they know that, sometimes they get there and then they don't know, and they realize maybe it isn't, but that doesn't mean you can't get a really good job that pays a really good wage, even if you don't complete college. And so one other area that, one resource that I think, and you may already be using this one in your classroom, but I think it's a really great tool for exploring occupations, is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. This comes to us from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So I decided just to highlight carpenters. And as one of the jobs, because the construction trade, and this being a high demand area for Florida, the median pay is $48,000 a year. An apprenticeship is with on-the-job training. So I really wasn't aware so much of how strong apprenticeships are in this area until I did a little bit of digging. From 2015 through this year, Broward College, Florida State College at Jacksonville, and St. Petersburg College had actually a federal grant program to support apprenticeships in the construction trades, in IT, in healthcare, but many, especially in the construction trades, because the population of workers is aging and there's going to be so many openings in this area, a lot of companies just have apprenticeships on their own. A lot of the state colleges have apprenticeship programs, and these apprenticeship programs, I was looking up some of them, and these are programs where they're going to be earning a wage while they're in the job, and they're free. They are absolutely free, and then the state college provides the classroom learning, and then they get the on-the-job learning on the job, being paid, and as they progress through the program, their wages will increase, and then they'll be prepared to take any kind of certification tests or get any kind of licenses that they need, and these are available at most of the state colleges. Here it tells you some of the things we've already talked about, but that carpenters are growing faster than average, and about 80,000 job increase over the next 10 years or so. One thing I like is it kind of gives you an overlook of what the job is. We talked about this, about the blue collar jobs or the dirty jobs that people talk about, but these jobs require many skills. Following blueprints, math's very much involved in carpentry, just cutting the board a little bit off, it doesn't fit, it's very important. Talks about tools and what kind of carpenters there are. And then it talks a little bit about the work environment, different ways to, could be in residential construction, it could be in finishing buildings, it could be self-employed with your own company. It does talk about, because it is a little bit of a dangerous job, it talks about that a little bit, and the schedules, and that you're going to be outside. It lets people know about that. How to become one, it talks about the education. One thing I like here is it talks about what you can do in high school to set yourself up for this. Talking about math, mechanical drawing, if you can get some vocational training, some schools have associate's degrees there, that mainly it's through apprenticeships and on-the-job training. It talks about how many hours you have to have for a typical program, talks about any kind of certifications you might need to have, different kinds of licenses as well, and how you can advance. And one thing I always like to mention, I love this story about exploring different occupations. There was a great story about Steve Jobs, Apple's Steve Jobs, about how he just on a whim decided to take a course in calligraphy. And when he was in college, and like, okay, when's he ever going to use that? Yeah, he did use that when he was building the first computers and all of the fonts. So that's one thing I think, just, encouraging students to explore different career areas. My daughter took just on a whim, took a class in statistics, and then just one class, and then she decided that's what she wanted to major in. So to just explore different areas, I think that's always good advice. And this tells you some of the ones you can take a look at if you're thinking about these kind of jobs while you're still in high school. It talks about all of the important qualities. Need to have good attention to detail, math, being able to solve problems, because sometimes the materials come in and they are not the right size. Can you make it fit? And that part, and then the pay, and talks about a little bit there, and showing that this is above average pay compared to all occupations. Also looks at the job outlook, and so here it's going faster than average, so that's always good to know what jobs are growing. And then you can actually go into your state. So Florida has the states with the highest employment of carpenters, about 45,000 employed in carpentry in Florida. One thing I think that's interesting, if you look here, so we've talked about this a little bit prior to this. Look at the wages, California, New York, Florida, and of course, the wages are much higher in California and New York, as is the cost of living. So that's something to consider there. Also, we see Texas and Pennsylvania. So that's something interesting to know too. Well, there'll be, once you complete the training, is there going to be a job available? And for carpentry in Florida, the outlook is pretty good. And then another thing I like about this is that it also shows similar jobs. So maybe you're not into measuring and cutting boards, and maybe being up high on a roof is not for you. But there's other things that you can do, the other occupations, and it lists them, as well as you can go in and investigate those as well. If you maybe have an interest in building things, maybe there's something else that might interest you a little bit more. And then they also give you all the contacts that you need as well if you want to investigate further. So that's a great resource to use to investigate, especially if you want to make a project where they're looking at different occupations. And this is a lesson that we have. It comes from the St. Louis Fed, called Dream Today, Job Tomorrow. And this is something that I think could really easily be translated to the digital classroom, because what it involves is it has students doing an interview and having someone come into the classroom or in a Zoom meeting, someone in their job, and they ask questions. And as they're asking questions, they're going to fill out this form on the right, the career building blocks. And so the way it works, and I will show you here, is there's a couple of questions that the students ask. So I thought about this in the digital world, how there's 15 questions, and maybe each student could be assigned to ask one question. And so they ask the guest speaker about their current job, asked about other jobs they've done, what did they study in high school that helped prepare them, what other training have they had, what kind of extracurricular activities did they do, what kind of volunteer work did they do, kind of getting the idea of different stops along the way that have helped this person to prepare for their career. So this could be something that could be done in a Zoom meeting. And then there is a written assignment for them to think about how they could develop their human capital in different ways, and using that lingo to help themselves prepare for a career. And then this as well is to have them kind of think of some of the things that they did well, some kind of accomplishments, maybe something that they did well, but they're thinking, how do I build that into a career? Or what, this is an extracurricular activity I really like, but are there any careers that could use those skills and those talents? And so I'm going to ask them to explore that and then build their own building blocks. And it also talks about soft skills. So that's something that we that we also highlight a lot, that it's the hard skills that get you the job, and the soft skills are the ones that help you keep the job. And so we have a lot of resources also on soft skills, and so they talk about that as well. And then they fill out some cards on what are some things they can do to keep building their human capital, how can they improve, and how can they get to that dream job. And so that's one of the lesson plans we have on our website. And another thing that we have on our website is Maximum Employment Matters. And so this is a video series, and this video series takes a number of different areas and interviews industry experts. And so they're talking about the opportunity occupations in that industry. They're talking about the skills that are needed, opportunities for scholarships, certifications that might be needed, or education, how you can prepare for careers in these areas or build your brand. But it also goes beyond that in talking a little bit about the soft skills that asks some of these industry experts what kind of questions do you ask in the interview. In fact, one said he asks, how do you pack a suitcase? He wants to know their organizational skills. They talk about the job application process. One question I thought was very interesting, they asked one of the experts, what if somebody just quits the job by never showing up? And he had a very interesting answer, which was he has a do not hire list. So they will not be able to be reemployed because of that kind of behavior. They talk about the job outlook, different skills and trends, what skills employers are looking for. And so these are, all these interviews are in very short segments. And so this is just another way to reinforce what you're teaching in the classroom, because as I said before, you can say it, but to hear somebody else say it, it really reinforces it in the student's mind. So I encourage you to check those out as well. And there's also a lesson plan that goes with those. We have 2 lesson plans here. One is the soft skills lingo bingo. So this introduces students to the soft skills, different things such as attitude, human capital, motivation, and teamwork. They do a self-assessment on that. They do a matching game with the word and the definition, and then they do a bingo game as well. So they get introduced to what those soft skills are and assess which ones they might have strengths in and which ones they might need to develop a little bit more. And then there's another one that's kind of a play on that interview process that I just talked about, called Are You Up to the Test? Actually, I've heard of people asking people to build a Lego figure in an interview. This is kind of off of that. They build a paper chain, but with very specific instructions. And first they try doing it themselves, and then they do it in teams. And so it's kind of a reinforcement of teamwork, which is something that when I taught a business class, all the employers said teamwork. That's something we're really looking for. And so it kind of helps them get a handle on how that can be important in the workplace as well. This is our website, our educational website. We've got a lot of different resources for you there, lesson plans. This is also in the classroom tools where you can access those infographics. And we also have a new financial tips series, and this is kind of leading into what Heather will be sharing with you. We have, since March, we have been focused on some tips that can help special resources for people in their financial world as we're going through the pandemic. And so we've got some ones on finances and where you can find some assistance. We've got certain websites that can help for families that are having financial challenges. We've also got some financial tips on some virtual resources for children if they'd like to learn a little bit more about money, and most kids do. And then there's also one that we just published on tax relief. We know the tax deadline is coming up very shortly, and there's some links there for assistance with that. And we're going to be publishing one soon on some scams, because scammers and fraudsters have been really working in overdrive during this time, because people are having, it's an uncertain, scary time both on the health and financial front. So we have that financial tip series available to you. And this is also our kind of clearinghouse. I showed you the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta's education website. This is the education website for the entire Federal Reserve System's education team. And you can search for resources there by audience, by age level, by the type of resource, and by topic. And these will all be personal finance and economics there. Everything from videos to free online courses that you can have students go through, to the posters, to lesson plans, games. We have all kinds of different types of resources there for K through college age. And so I'm going to stop and see if I can, there's any questions. I'm going to stop sharing and turn this over to Heather.
Thank you, Lesley, so much for all those really useful resources. I've learned some new things too, so I can't wait to look at your website and look at some of those new resources that you spoke of. Thank you so much. So give us just a moment to transition. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the resources available to our students as they may be struggling through this uncertain time. Okay, so again, I'm Heather Surrency, and I work on the Florida Literacy Coalition as the Health and Financial Literacy Coordinator. So I just wanted to start by kind of talking about what our state is struggling with right now. The Florida unemployment rate in May 2020 was 14.5%. But if we look back to May 2019, it was 3.2%. So we know that our state is really struggling right now in terms of how the economy has been affected by COVID-19. So these are just a few statistics pulled out from the DEO website. Again, I just wanted to kind of help people see what we're talking about. There's definitely been a lot in the media about DEO and problems that people have had with their claims. So if you look on to the left, you can see that there have been 2,402,000 unique claims filed for state re-unemployment assistance. If we look down here on the right, I think this is really interesting. So total claimants paid 1,470,000. But really, in the state of Florida, you receive $275 per week in unemployment assistance. The majority of funds that are going to help people through this come from the federal system. And so I tried to kind of explain these two things for you here. The federal PUA, which is basically an extension of the state unemployment benefits. It can be $600 a week for people who are approved for assistance. We see only 212,000 Floridians have actually been paid this amount. So even of the Floridians who are getting unemployment, they're getting about $275 a week, which unfortunately for many people is going to still make their financial situation difficult, especially if they have a single earner in their household. So for these reasons, I think it's really important for us to all know what resources could be available and how we can assist our students. So one of the most important, I think, assistance programs would be food assistance. So I just wanted to give you a few of the major programs or the major ways for you to find these providers in the state of Florida. Feeding Florida Now is a great one. So this is just a screenshot of their website. I put in my zip code and it shows me on a map all of the different distribution locations in my area. I can click on those locations and it gives me the phone number and the address. So this is the most comprehensive site I've seen in terms of locating food assistance programs in a particular area. We do also have the school systems that are still in most areas providing meals for pickup. So again, the similar sort of program, you click on this, put in your zip code, and you can find where those meals can be distributed for children. So a relatively new program you may have heard me speak of before if you see my webinars is Full Cart, which I'm really excited about. Full Cart is a full meal delivery system, similar to some of the other commercial ones that you see on the market. Traditionally, a customer was responsible for paying shipping charges and the food was free. But during the pandemic now, for those who qualify, Full Cart has free food delivery. So it comes in a box and they can choose certain meals that they want included in their food box. Also new this year, for people who qualify for SNAP, they can order online through both Walmart and Amazon. And I have a link on the presentation for a little bit more information about that. It does not include shipping charges, unfortunately, but it does include like grocery pickup at Walmart. And if somebody did have an account with them that covered shipping, it would be free, or they could pay per order for the shipping. So I just want to say a few more words about SNAP because we want to make sure that people who qualify are getting benefits and that they understand exactly what that means at this point. So right now through June 20th, June 2020, and hopefully this will be extended, anyone who qualifies will get the maximum monthly allotment. And this graph here shows you what that amount would be determined by how many people are in a household. Additionally, there is a pandemic EBT program that is automatically issuing additional funds in the month of June to children whose families are already receiving SNAP to ensure that they are getting extra food during this time that schools are closed. Some additional assistance programs I wanted you to be aware of. The FCC has a program called Keep Americans Connected Pledge, and organizations can sign up for this to provide special accounts that include no termination. They do not have late fees associated with them, and they allow users to use open Wi-Fi hotspots. Another great resource in terms of internet would be everyoneon.org. This too has a zip code search so people can find what deals might be available in their area. For example, in my area, AT&T has a $10 per month plan, and I have heard differing things that sometimes these plans can be hard to access, but also Spectrum and Comcast have programs as well. Some of them are educationally focused, but this Internet Essentials program through Comcast has internet provider or internet available at low cost, as well as computers. People, if they financially qualify, can get computers at a reduced cost. Most of them are refurbished. In my area for the Internet Essentials, I could get a desktop computer for $150, which is still pricey, but definitely a discounted amount from the normal price of a computer. I also wanted to mention health insurance updates. So for many people, there are changes in their life that would allow them to relook at their health insurance. So Covering Florida is a great organization that provides free insurance navigators. So if you do have students who previously had health insurance and have lost it due to either a job layoff or a furlough, I would encourage them to contact Covering Florida, speak with a navigator so that they can see whether there could be any changes. Also, for people who already have an ACA or health.gov policy, if they've had an economic change or a financial change in their income, it may change how much help they can get on their existing policy. So there's really a lot of good information that we can get from the navigators in terms of health insurance. Other assistance programs, many counties are doing a county-specific assistance program. I'm in Orange County, for example, and they have launched ours 3 times. Been very, very popular. In fact, I think the website's gone down. There's so much need. But I would encourage you to keep up with what's going on in your county government to see if there are assistance programs available for the residents. We also see housing assistance still being available. We're hoping, again, that the governor will extend the mortgage foreclosure and rental eviction order that he has already once extended. But right now, that is only good through July 1st, which is next week. Federally backed mortgages are also providing 120-day protection from foreclosures and rental evictions. So that 120-day clock started on March 27th. Now, the struggle, I think, is that these orders do not relieve the individual from paying their obligation at the end of the period. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of difficulty for people if they haven't been paying their rent to be able to pay it at the end of that time. But that's why we want to really encourage people before they get to that point where they have to make a payment to try to either negotiate with their lender or their landlord or look to additional assistance programs. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has a lot of great information about housing assistance, including how to have a conversation, how to contact your mortgage company or your landlord. So they have some really great plain language materials on their website. Another new exciting thing that Wells Fargo is doing for the state of Florida as well as the country is they have provided funding to financial counselors to provide free counseling services. So here are the 4 main programs that Wells Fargo is working with to provide free counseling. So I encourage you to take a look at these if you think that your students may really benefit from that. And here's just some examples of ways that financial coaches can help us as well as our adult learners. They can help people to create a budget. They can help to find some of the local resources that we're talking about to provide help with food and clothing, shelter, and other basic needs. They can help with prioritizing bills and knowing what to pay. That seems to be a big question. You know, I don't have enough to pay all my bills, so which bills do I pay? Which ones come first? So that's a real benefit of talking with a financial coach or counselor. They can help a person to apply for benefits. And this is another really important one. We were talking about the unemployment insurance earlier, and this can be really difficult for our students who may have limited English or limited education because it's very complicated. My family personally has been through that process, and it's very difficult. So I think it's great to encourage people to reach out both to the DEO as well as financial coaches to help fill out that paperwork. Opening bank accounts, using other digital tools to manage money, and then how to address credit issues or debt issues. And here are a few additional financial assistance resources that you can click through. And I would love it in the chat if you know of some financial assistance programs in your area. I would love to hear more about some of those programs. So please add that into the chat. So if you want to talk about financial literacy in the classroom, the virtual classroom or in-person classroom, there's so many wonderful resources, and Lesley just showed us all the great things available from the Federal Reserve Bank. But 3 other areas to kind of get you started that really focus on plain language materials would be, as I said, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This link takes you directly to materials designed for the adult education classroom. So they're all plain language and very easy to use. Hands-on Banking has an online course, many different courses, young adults, teens, retirees, veterans. So that's a great free resource to start speaking about financial literacy in your classroom as well. And then the National Endowment for Financial Education as well has plain language materials designed for the adult education classroom. So from talking with students and instructors, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think really one of the concerns is what bills do I pay now and which ones do I not? So I think in a virtual classroom setting, it's a great time to discuss this. So I know some instructors, what they do is they have a scenario of a student or of an adult who's in a financial and is having financial problems. They kind of come up with how much money they're making, what their bills are, as a test case to kind of see how would a person go through these different steps of handling a financial problem. And there's a link at the bottom here, a nice little program that kind of helps you estimate what your bills are, what your income coming in is, and can help students to see how to budget kind of on the fly. I really like that particular website because you can change the amounts easily and see, okay, if I spend more money here, then I have to take less money, spend less money there. So it really allows you to kind of move things around in real time. Here's some additional financial literacy resources I think that could be helpful for you. Definitely the FLC financial literacy page. We have lots of resources on just implementing financial literacy programs in the classroom, as well as COVID-19 specific information. We mentioned the Federal Reserve. New York Times has a really interesting kind of Q&A section about financial literacy and how COVID-19 has affected people. FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, they've done a lot about both how to cope with debt as well as how to prevent fraud and scams. So they have some classroom activities. They have FTC bingo that would be great to use in the virtual classroom. And then Capital Good Fund, if you've never heard of them, I encourage you to take a look at the services that they provide. They provide low-cost loans to people who traditionally do not qualify for loans. They do car loans, they do home loans, a wide variety. So it's a really interesting nonprofit organization that is trying to help people out that are in a financial situation. They've been around a long time, so not specifically just for COVID-19, but they have rolled out, I believe, some new programs to help people with that. So the last thing I want to mention, I'm really excited to announce that just this week we have released the Florida Financial Literacy Initiative call for applications. So here's a little bit of information for you on that. You can get the application off of our website, and the link is right here. And we will have an application webinar on July 13th from 1 to 1:45 p.m. We'll talk a little bit about the application, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions. But to give you kind of a brief overview of our initiative, we encourage all Florida adult education, ESOL, and family literacy programs to consider applying. We support the integration of literacy, math, and language instruction with financial education. So we take a contextualized learning approach to financial literacy. We're going to be awarding 8 grants of up to $5,000. And this is a funded program by Wells Fargo, so we're so thankful to them for their continued support, and the initiative is managed by us at FLC. So I think we have a few more minutes to take a look at questions or comments. If you look at the chat box in the beginning, you'll see that I did post both of the presentations for today. And Greg Smith has reminded us in the chat box that we do have our online auction still going on today. It ends at 4 p.m. So I encourage you to take a look and bid on some of the great items that we have available in our auction. Also, at the end of this, you will have an evaluation form, so we would greatly appreciate hearing your feedback. I do have a question, so I'll take just a moment to answer that. If an employee has been tested positive for COVID-19 and my student is concerned about staying at work and getting infected herself, yet if she quits, she's not available for unemployment, what can she do? So Mary, this is a really kind of complicated question. Unfortunately, there are people who do not feel comfortable in their work situation, but yet it can be hard to negotiate with their employer. So I would say that that is the best thing to try to do, is to negotiate the best possible about the concerns with the employer. Lesley, I don't know if you have any suggestions on how to handle that.
No, I think that's really good advice. And somebody had a question about the resources that you talked about. Were they only for students or also available for people in the community to apply for?
Oh, thanks for pointing that out. I didn't see that question. Yes, so these resources are available for everyone as individuals. Today, I didn't really focus on the nonprofit resources available, but these are available for us as Floridians. So I think we're just about out of time. Thank you so much, Lesley, for presenting in this session today, and everyone for attending. And we hope you have a great afternoon. Please don't forget to fill out your evaluation. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.